All right, everyone. We have 24 people online, and I suggest we start the event. I'm really excited that you guys are already here, and some of you has joined like really early, half an hour before the event. I'm so excited. We already have so many people. 80 people have registered, but as it usually happens, people sometimes late, and we waited for them already 8 minutes. I suggest we start, and I will begin talking about the community, and Bob Dorf will join us a little bit later, and we'll talk about survival month. I ask you to keep your mic off so we can hear the speakers, and if you have any questions, please write them in the chat, and we'll ask these questions to the speakers. Thank you. My first question, do you all hear me well? And do you see me well? Awesome. This event will be in English, and I will start the presentation right now. So I'm really excited to see everyone here, and I will not present Bob Dorf. There will be Gary Fowler, my partner, will present him. I'll talk about this later. We are very excited to have the second event for the Go Global community, Go Global Russia from Skolkovo Technopark. Actually, I started, this is probably the first Go Global community in Russia that is in English for founders who are seeking to go global, and the community has direct ties with Silicon Valley ecosystem. In fact, I myself, Gary Fowler, Derek Distenfield, and other partners of ours have a lot of connections in the United States. We all live in the United States, and we have a lot of experience starting companies, raising capital, and we are happy to help the community with those things. I founded this community and envisioned this community for a while, maybe a few years ago. I started thinking of that, and the best platform ended up to be at Skolkovo Technopark, and we have these events at least every month, every first Thursday of each month. Sometimes we have events that start the other days. We announce them separately if we have some interesting topic to discuss. Most of the event will be held in English, and every month we try to bring an excellent speaker like Bob Dorf, and so you guys can have a direct interaction with a great speaker like him. The mission of the community I envision is that all entrepreneurs, English-speaking entrepreneurs in Russia, are willing to go global, and they need to have access to capital, to customers, and like-minded people. So on our platform, on the Go Global community in Telegram, I try to unite all of you. We already have 100 people registered, and the community is growing rapidly. We give you access, some sort of access to Silicon Valley ecosystem. We will connect you with the best entrepreneurs. We'll help you to ask questions. We actually will, I will encourage you to ask questions each other and help each other. But your role is to actually, if somebody is needed help in the community, your role is to help as well. So this is how the community should work. It is a free community, but we select people to join the community. Those are really seeking to go global, and those are really helping. And so please participate. Speaking about the recent events we had on this community, one of our first speaker was a pretty famous Hollywood actor, Medina Islam. He's also a successful entrepreneur. He spoke about how to gain the perseverance to go global. And we had a very interesting conversation, and the audience had a chance to ask him questions directly. He connected with us live from Los Angeles last time. Derek Dissenfield spoke last time about customer development in the United States. He's, in my opinion, one of the best top managers in terms of running, operating companies. He has a lot of expertise in how to build sales in the United States. He's also a co-founder and COO of GSD Venture Studios. Myself, I spoke about how to prepare for funding and raise capital. I helped, during the past 7 years, I helped quite many companies to raise capital in Silicon Valley. And I had some tips for founders to raise capital. Those of you who hasn't joined the community yet, there is a simple way to do this. I'll give you 1 minute just to scan this barcode. Make sure that your phone has VPN on. If you don't have VPN on, then you just can search name on Telegram, Go Global Russia, brackets in English. This is the name of the community, and this is how you will join. People asking me questions, just a second. All right, next. Those of you who are looking for ways to actually get outside of your country and grow your company globally, and probably start in the United States, we at GSD are happy to help. Feel free to scan this code to get my contacts and email me directly and tell me what exactly you guys look for. I will help you.
Danielle, you stopped. We couldn't hear you for a minute. You froze.
I froze.
Yeah, so repeat, okay?
All right, thank you, Gary. Again, I will repeat about the community. In order to join the community, please scan this barcode. If you cannot scan this barcode, you can search this community by searching Go Global Russia, brackets in English, and on Telegram. And this is how you join the community and the chat of the community. And there you can ask questions, participate in conversations, and interact with the other founders of the community. If you guys looking for ways to go global, you want to go other countries, start business there, or start business in the United States, and I suggest you start business in the United States as a port to the rest of the world. Feel free to scan this code with my direct contacts. And
Daniel, you froze again.
What's that? I will be happy to help you.
There's probably too many of us.
Danielle, you froze again.
Can you hear me?
Still. Yeah.
Do you guys hear me well now?
Yeah, just stay still because when you move, it changes.
All right. I'm repeating third time. In order for you guys to go global, and if you have questions and you need help with that, and you want to start a business in the United States, or you have already business running in the United States and you need some help, we at GSD are happy to help you. We have all the resources, knowledge, and connections to do that. Scan this barcode, get my contacts, and shoot me an email or text me on WhatsApp. I'll be happy to answer all your questions and jump on a call with you. And we can do it anytime later. All right. And text me in a chat if you didn't manage to collect my contacts. I'll shoot you my contacts again. So I'd like to speak about Gary Fowler, the founder of GSD. He's one of the most successful entrepreneurs that I personally know. He started about 15 companies, and one of the company he started went public. The other one was sold for $1.3 billion. He writes constantly on Forbes, and he actually founded GSD Venture Studios. This guy doesn't need actually an introduction. Many people in Russia and in the United States know him. Gary actually knows Bob Dorf really well, and I let him to speak about himself and introduce Bob Dorf. Hey Gary, before you start, just I will repeat again for the audience who just participated, has joined. In order to ask questions, please ask your questions in the chat. Please speak only English, and please keep yourself muted during the whole event. And we'll help you. We'll help you if you have anything there. All right, Gary. I'll let you introduce Bob Dorf. Before Bob joins us, you can talk as long as you want.
Yeah, Bob is here. Okay, super. So, hi everybody. It's great to see you. And you know, I just want to say this: these times actually are quite interesting because I'll tell you, I've been able to get to more venture capitalists now than I have ever in my life because they're home, their kids are there, their dogs are there. They're actually being very responsive. So I got to tell you, it's a really interesting time. Somebody's echoing. Danielle, can you mute? So anyhow, I've known Bob Dorf for a number of years, and we met, I guess, in the late 90s. He was working with Peppers and Rogers, one-to-one marketing. I mean, worldwide guru, best-selling book then. I mean, he's been a credible entrepreneur. And he wrote the book, The Startup Owner's Manual. Bob had worked with us at Skolkovo Startup Academy, which Lawrence and I started, and also a GVA. So Bob is an incredible guy. He's always on the cutting edge. Customer development. I started a company with David Yang a few years ago. David founded Abby. We have two companies together, a venture fund and also Eva. Anyhow, using customer development, it helped us pivot 3 times. And I always listen to what Bob said, get out of the building, it counts about the first sale. So Bob's been a good friend. He's a best-selling author, and he's the most knowledgeable guy I know, way more than me. So I'm humbled to have my good friend, Bob Dorf, join us today. Bob?
Well, thanks, Gary. With that introduction, about the best thing I could do is say thank you and good night. My mother didn't say such nice things about me when she was on this planet with us, but it's a pleasure to say hello to hopefully my many Russian friends in the audience. I have, I think, about 15, 16 trips to Russia over the years. The first one before Russia was a freer, independent country back in 1989, just as the world was changing for the better for many of you, and actually probably more your parents in those days. But and as I think you know, one of the best-selling business books in Russia for some years now is the Startup Owner's Manual, which Steve Blank and I wrote together in 2012 and 13, and it was in large measure based on, more important than anything else, between the covers of that book are the 500 stupid startup mistakes that either Steve or I made personally, and of the 500, we probably made 100 of them together. And I don't want to bore you with my background, but I was involved in 7 IPOs. I personally started 8 companies, 2 very successful in the tens of millions in value, 3 where I really learned how you build a startup, total disaster, failures. And when you have a failure, you learn a lot more than when you're ringing the bell at the NASDAQ or the stock exchange for an IPO, because then all you're doing is telling yourself how brilliant you were and how insightful and wise. But when you take a couple of years of hard work and a pile of your own money and flush it down the toilet, that's when you pause and you think, what am I not going to do again? What did I learn from this experience?
it's exciting actually, and the community in Russia is growing. We have many founders, like really with bright minds and interesting, excellent projects that the guys are trying to take them global. Most of them on the community speak English, and they actually are excited to see and have like a direct conversation with people like you are. And this is a very exciting moment, despite the history we just made.
Well, in fact, so it's my pleasure to be here. I have, as I said earlier, for those of you who heard it before the interruption, I've been to Russia, I think, about 24 times, taught repeatedly at Skolkovo, and I've been to Ukraine and to St. Petersburg, and I've enjoyed your beautiful museums and people, mostly the people. So why don't we do this backwards, right? Entrepreneurship is all about pivoting. Why don't we start with the questions and answers out of respect for the people who have stayed with us through the bombing? And then when we think we've got most of our group together, I'll go to my more formal remarks. I think that's probably a good pivot, as we say. So if you have questions, either please in English in the chat or in English turn your microphone on briefly to ask the question, and we'll start backwards and go from there.
Please ask questions if you have any.
I think you guys showed resiliency, that's for sure. I'll go back to mute, but I just want to say great job of showing resiliency in the face of all that nonsense.
Oh, okay. There's another beautiful Russian lady joining us.
Thank you.
Welcome, Diana. And I think we have, anyway, any thoughts?
What are the key challenges of these startups are facing, in your opinion, and what would you like ensure to recommend them? Like maybe some of it you cover with your presentation, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, in some respects, it's the bad news is, startups are fragile enterprises to begin with, and this is going to dramatically increase the pressure on almost every startup, as well as every major business, whether it's here or in Russia or in, Warsaw. And the people who will survive are the lean people, not because they're following the method or reading my book, but because they are moving quickly to make decisions with imperfect data sets. I was on a call earlier this morning with one of my Columbia Business School teams that is in the business of selling dental insurance to small businesses. They recognized already that their business is in the toilet. Whatever priority small and medium-sized business owners put to dental insurance for their employees has been demoted from maybe number 25 on the list of things to think about to number 100 or 200. And having survived the collapse of the internet bubble in year 2000, it just took 1 0 off my net worth, but other than that, it wasn't terrible. And I haven't missed a meal, as you can probably tell. The strangest thing that happened to me was even the best businesses were facing struggles because their customers were facing struggles and going out of business. And so to me, the very first, and so the survivors are the agile ones who move quickly to assess the situation that we're dealing with, maybe even jumping to conclusions faster than you would in almost any other circumstance in your business life, because you're really, in most cases, dealing with a question of your business's ability to survive. So, for example, the dental marketers are rebuilding their business as we speak around how can we help you think about employee benefits to retain the employees you want to keep and to attract new ones to fill the slots of people who've left. So it's almost a complete shift in the business model. Another team I was working with earlier in the week said, which was actually a lender to small businesses in India, said, well, our biggest question is how much longer is the road to break even than it was on our business plan a month ago. We know it's going to be longer. What are our investors going to say to that? And are we going to be able to demonstrate that we have earned the additional investment that might require to cover the cash flow to get through the longer, red ink period? And you just can't assume that anything you knew 2 months ago is still valid about the future of your business. And it's a much easier thing for me to say as your speaker than it is for you to think about as the CEO or founder or thinking about launching a business. But it's imperative that you address this and that you gather the sort of smartest advisors, coaches, smart fellow entrepreneurs who you think can add some wisdom to your conversation, and that you do it with the most naked honesty you can about your fears and your challenges. And in some cases, sadly, the wisest thing may be to either, sort of shut it down or shut it down temporarily, and either think about a totally different business model to help fellow Russians confront the new challenges and new reality and things like that. And these are very, very hard decisions for many entrepreneurs who put their hearts and souls into their business idea and work, the kind of hours that successful entrepreneurs need to work to succeed. And so I think sort of, if there's a step one, it's really attract a group of really smart people who care about you and your business's success. That often means it's not your investors, because this is a point where the entrepreneur and the investor have very different interests. The entrepreneur is trying to keep the business going, and the investor is trying to salvage or save his or her investment. I still remember a call I got in May of 2000, right? The NASDAQ and the internet bubble burst on April 8th, 2000, year 2000. And companies were just bleeding the same way they are bleeding today. And although in 2000, nobody was dying. Now, as I understand it, Moscow has only just been locked down, I think, the beginning of this week. My daughter and her husband and my 2 grandchildren live right in the heart of Manhattan. And thank goodness, 2 weeks ago on Sunday, I drove in there with an SUV and we loaded up toilet paper and kids' clothing and everything and got them the hell out of New York City. And I don't know what the situation is in Moscow today, but if you are approaching the same kinds of stresses we are seeing in the New York area, I live about an hour from New York in the woods in Connecticut, fortunately in a house that's big enough to hold my daughter, her husband, my two wonderful grandchildren, and thank goodness the nanny. But not everybody is as lucky, and the paralysis it has sort of infected businesses with is a challenge to every entrepreneur, unless perhaps you're in the sanitation business or something very tuned into the current challenges. So let me take a deep breath and see if anybody has a particular question, and then we'll, oh, here, I've got one here. First one, thanks to our earlier Zoom call, is I am not a bot, do not worry. So this question comes from Ivan in Switzerland, in Geneva. People say the environment is too conservative for startups to flourish. Over these years, observing Russia moving to the new economic reality, what are the trends I've observed? I think we should really, I mean, what I've seen in the almost 10 years now that I've been visiting Russia and working with startups is a real awakening to the many opportunities that exist throughout the CIS countries and the region. Excuse me. So, and
1 second, I will mute this person.
Yeah, Dan.
so
Keep yourself muted, guys.
and I think that the current, so, and the reason it seems so relatively easy to be a brave entrepreneur in the United States is that we have been at this. It's not that the US is so great or we have a wonderful president, which we certainly don't have. It's really that the United States has 75 years of entrepreneurial experience. Our entrepreneurship movement began in 1945 when Frederick Tierman, this was in the heart of World War II, and the provost of Stanford University called all his PhD engineering professors to a meeting and said, stop teaching. Get all your brightest PhDs and your graduate students out of the building and go and help these fledgling electronics and technology companies figure out how to build technology that will help us win the war. This was when we were on the same side, by the way. In other words, build this sort of partnership between the nation's brightest engineers and the emerging business community. And certainly, if Russia is known for things beyond beautiful women and great vodka, it's known for engineering talent. And so the smartest entrepreneurs are going to think about how can I harness the talented engineers to solve some of the new problems that are being presented by the virus, wherever it sort of ends and wherever it ultimately impacts. In a conversation I had this week, we were talking a lot about how the virus is going to drive more and more people to do more and more things digitally. So what opportunities does that present to your team's expertise? It may be that the entrepreneurs who come out of this the most successful.
Знаете, да, что в Лондоне таксисты открывали все окна, ездили со всеми окнами открытыми.
It may be that the entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs who come out of this most successfully are the ones who throw out the business they've been working on and shift to whether it's disinfecting or moving things from physical world to digital world, or helping people navigate that transition. Because I think, at least here in the New York area, we can already see it's going to be a very long time before people go back to movie theaters, before people go back to restaurants, before there are large conventions and trade shows and things like that, where, you know, thousands of people are together in a space. And so the winners are going to be the ones who jump on those brand new opportunities and either shift their current business model in that direction, or throw out the old business model if they and their inner circle team of advisors agree the old business model isn't as exciting today as it was 60 days ago. And we don't see any real opportunity for improvement in the next 6 months or a year. 6 months or a year, I used to joke about, right? They say that a human year is the equivalent of 7 dog years. I think that a human year is the equivalent of 7 startup years. So putting your, you know, telling your startup team to, don't worry, this is going to get better. It's going to take a while. A while to a startup is a lifetime. And so from the heart, the most important advice I can give to each of you is, this is the time to dig in deep, think smart and quickly, and act. Because waiting for this to get better may be measured in years, not months, right? The sort of wisdom around here, again, not because we're smarter, but because we're a few months ahead of you in the virus crisis. The wisdom around here, I read an article this morning, this will be every bit as bad as the Great Depression of the 1930s, where many, many millions of people were on breadlines and unemployed for ages and losing their life savings and their houses. And I hope that's not the case, but I certainly know it's not going to be anytime soon before the stock market starts to take off, before consumers are spending the way they were spending as recently as a month or two ago. And if you are not, and I don't want to be the professor of gloom and doom, but frankly, I'm quite scared about the future. I'm mostly, a retired professor, and I haven't missed a meal and don't think I have to worry about that, before they put me in a hole, hopefully no time soon. And so that sort of urgency of your thinking, which was important when you were doing the lean startup process, has increased exponentially in the way you attack issues, questions about your business model. And I believe the place to start, as is my sort of natural, if you will, prejudice, the place to start is by talking to your customers. And this, I'm getting into some of my slides, but your customers know how, are there other things I can do to help you in this troubled time? Are there other services I can provide? Are there different services I can provide? And I think those are some of the questions you need to be asking. And the customer development method believes, and has, I believe, proven at this point, both in CIS and US, that the root of wisdom about building successful startups is not in my book, it's not in my head, it's between the ears of your customers. And so both to keep the customers you have and to learn from them to help guide where your business goes from this day forward is a top priority, and I would encourage you to be reaching out. So I have another interesting question. Our company is, and this is from Liao. Our company has just returned the money invested in it. It should be very promising for Western investors. We've redesigned the business model for the crisis. Good for you, and for the Western market as well. Is it worth communicating with investors now? I don't honestly think so. I think you have to at least wait a week or 2 or 3 to see if there is some stability ahead. In the US, we think that in the New York area, which is the epicenter of the virus now, it seems, in the world, we know it's at least another 3 weeks, if not 6 weeks, before the peak of the virus and before the number of cases and deaths starts to decline. One school of thought is that we won't see normal again until there is a vaccine, right? A vaccine could easily be 18 months away, if not 2 years, even with accelerated approvals by the government agencies and so forth. And so the Liao's question, is it worth communicating with investors now? I think that I would think about it 2 ways. The first way is to investors you have spoken with before. Hi, it's Bob. I just want to say hello and hope that you and your family are safe. And I don't know, I am sure you have more urgent priorities at the moment, but if you have time in the next week or 2 or 3, I would love to update you on how we have changed our business model or our progress and our revised forecast based on the crisis and so forth. So that would be one way to certainly gently stay in touch with people you have contacted before. I think it's an extremely difficult time to have call it a first introduction or a first conversation with an investor who doesn't know you. Because most of the venture capital investors in the United States, and I suspect in CIS countries as well, they are doing triage on their existing companies to see, is there anything left here? Do they need more money? Can we cut the payroll? Can we cut the budget? Can we get some of our money back? They're dealing with, they're almost like emergency room triage nurses right now. And having a first conversation to learn about a new business is just not going to make their top 20 things to do right now. So if you are reaching out to people you don't know, I think you want to express concern for their situation and respect for the pressure they must be under. And then something gentle like, I don't know where this fits on your priority list, but I would love to introduce myself when it suits you, and be respectful of the pressures they're under. The one exception to that is if you are pivoting to call it crisis-related business, like if you've taken your office cleaning company and turned it into we sanitize viral sites and make offices safe for human occupancy. In other words, we have a business that is vitally important in this new world order. And so I know you're not really focused on new investments, but this one might be worth a conversation. But if you just have the latest online sneaker store or new piece of sort of traditional business software, I think you are better, your time is better spent talking to customers, cutting deals with prospects to get them using your product, even if it's on a free trial basis, and trying to focus your energy on either pivoting the assets you currently have or doing everything you can to minimize the downside, minimize the damage, and at the same time optimize around whatever you can adjust in your go-to-market strategy to capitalize on the crisis, to find a way to make your business more important at this horrible and extraordinary time in all of our lives. So that sort of answers the rest of Leo's questions. Is it worth communicating with investors now? I don't, only under the terms I've sort of talked about. And what are American investors looking for in Russian startups? I think we should save that for a conversation down the road, because right now investors are, about the only thing an investor would be looking for in a new exploration of a foreign investment is something that is right smack in the middle of solutions, if you will, to the crisis. And of course, ultimately, for your business, scaling to foreign markets definitely matters, but you have to first be successful and gaining traction in your home court, in your home country, your founding country, to be, of interest or value to customers in other countries or to investors in those countries. So now Daniel is saying so let's see, do we have I've been blabbing along here. Anybody got a new question, or should I begin the actual slide presentation?
Yeah, I suggest we continue with the presentation.
Okay, now am I going to be able to show it on my screen, or
yeah, I will open
am I now the host, so to speak? I think no, I'm not. So
I will keep myself as the host and open your slides. Just
okay.
Let me know.
Just so we don't get hacked, Bob. We're going to try to minimize the hacking thing.
Well, I hope so, yeah. Yeah, by the way, for those of you who don't know, hopefully you'll, stay with me through this conversation, but you should Google a thing called Zoom bombing. Since you have now experienced it, you might want to understand what it is and why all my shares in Zoom.com are down $10 a share today and $10 a share yesterday over their inability to provide, totally secure communication. Anyway, so if we can, and I think the most important thing in this is I'm not the all-knowing expert here. I'm as scared of this and uncertain about it and what it means for our future as you are. And I'm just trying to offer you the benefits of my scars and bruises. And, what I usually say in groups like this is I started my first company before anybody on the call was born. In 1972, okay, I quit a very good job to start my first of 8 businesses, sold it eventually for somewhere around $44 million after 17 long, hard years. Went on and did 7 more startups. 3 of which were disasters, 1 of which was when I retired, valued in the low hundreds of millions of dollars. And I've also been involved in 7 IPOs, including one where I met Gary Fowler back in the 1970, I'm sorry, not that old, but 1996-7 in Internet 1.0. So anyway, if we could have the next slide, please. In fact, okay, you know, my co-author and the founder of another of my IPO startups, Steve Blank, says the one good, and who served in the Vietnam War and saw a lot of people die, said the one good thing about startups is nobody dies from a failure. And I think what we're seeing, you know, today is our startups are normally rather fragile creatures, and this has increased the fragility or the risk of startups exponentially. I remember one of my 30 angel investments, you know, 8 of which IPO'd and 8 of which failed miserably. One of the miserable failures ended in a phone call from the lead investor who said, we're shutting it all down today and giving everybody what's left of their money back because the company, which was doing very well, had 8 customers. There was a big enterprise software system for managing people's behavior online a long time ago. And of the 8 customers, 4 of them shut down their businesses, 2 of them canceled their contracts, and the other 2 were 90 days behind in paying their invoice from the company. So the company essentially went from good, not profitability, but good, solid business to virtually zero in a matter of a few weeks. And I was furious. I was a smaller investor. I think I was about $1 million investor. He was about a $20 million investor, and that he would shut it down without even talking to me. I wanted to move in on that company and try to fix it. And that kind of snap decision is what you're going to see a lot of right now as investors are trying to rescue their portfolios as best they can. So we just need to recognize this. And again, this is a situation where speed will win. Better to make an imperfect decision today than to think about it for 2 more weeks, I guess, is sort of the way I would think about it. So next slide, please. In fact, watch my finger, if you would, Daniel, when you see it go. And, you know, so here are 3, and we will send you all these slides later because I'm not going to read you every word of every slide, but here are 3 good places to start your homework in thinking about this. There's a wonderful article called The Black Swan at Sequoia Capital, one of the world's great venture capitalists, probably my favorite. The other is 3 different articles at steveblank.com. They're right on the landing page, but sort of a more details on survival strategy and also a closer look at sort of financial issues. And then, of course, the resources that are available to you, you know, at GSD. So next, please. You know, and again, it's the time where you really need to reach out to, oh, this is going to be painful. Okay, so whoever says, you know, that they know what's going on is really full of it, you know. And as I said earlier, it's more likely to get worse before it gets better, whether you're in the United States or the CIS or sadly just about anywhere in the world. And so your job, if you're a CEO, is as simple as ABC. assess the situation, think about how to change your plan and how to build a new plan in days, not weeks or months, and build in corrective action to respond to, to the situation. And one of the ways to think about it is in a normal operating mode, a startup should make most of its decisions in one meeting. Okay. Now you need to make all of the decisions, even the most critical ones, like, do we stay in this business or try something else? Maybe that's 2 or 3 meetings, but it's not 2 or 3 weeks, because in 2 or 3 weeks, it's certainly not going to get better. And the other thing to think about is that cash is really critical. In fact, I would suggest your very first meeting is and we'll go through some more details on this in a minute, but preserving cash at all costs, cutting any expenses you possibly can. Next slide, please. And when you don't know, go and talk to your customers, right? Why don't you just roll these all down? I don't need to read. We've got a nice group of people here, right? Talk to people. What else? Are there other services we can provide to help you through this time, right? Then think about your better customers as sources of cash. Hey, can you pay your bill, please? We really need the money to pay payroll. Can we sell you extra services? How about can you pay us 3 months in advance and we'll give you 5 months of service? Well, what's called customer prepay. There's a wonderful program going on here where I live in Stamford, Connecticut, a town of about 100,000 people. The restaurants are all out of business, right? And they just started something called a restaurant bond. For $85, you buy a $100 credit at your favorite restaurant. And so it gives that owner some immediate cash flow, and it gives the customer, a discount. And they've organized, the Chamber of Commerce has organized this as a formal program. It's to me, a lovely idea to help these smaller entrepreneurs survive in this horrible time. One of my favorite such entrepreneurs is actually a Russian woman who has a lovely diner near my house where I eat breakfast once or twice a week. And she, in a conversation with a friend I have breakfast with, said the other morning, all I can do now is takeout business. Nobody is allowed by law to enter my restaurant, so they order their food, we bring it to their car, and I'm bringing in $200 a day, which is less than my rent. Doesn't cover the food, doesn't cover the electricity, the heat, the gas, the people. And she talked to her landlord, who has basically said, sorry, pay up. The other thing you have to recognize now is that any new business development activities are going to perform miserably compared to how they performed even 30 days ago, because your customers are stressed out. They are dealing with different challenges, different problems. And unless you have the miracle cure, like a 5-year, no paperwork, instant loan, which is not a very good business model, I wouldn't really recommend it. Your ability to get the customer's attention is going to drop dramatically. And so I think your journey starts with the customers you already have, to see if they, next please, have any ideas that can guide you a little bit, okay? So I think, okay, so some of the things you want to do is look at, how has the situation changed in the past few weeks? Second, what is my 90-day cash situation? This is usually a pretty distressing exercise. Excuse me. Third, where can I find other cash? Are there accounts receivable I can collect? Do I have credit lines that are still valid where I can just draw down all that money, put it in my bank account, pay the interest, but know that I have it in case I need it, because you probably will, okay? Next, look at the 5 or 10 most important contracts you have, whether it's rent or software or consulting or whatever. Go back and negotiate discounts. And also 2 other things that we sort of skipped through. Number 1 is, as the founder, your salary is the first one to either get eliminated or cut dramatically. Who else can you talk to about taking a pay cut or deferring their pay or something that keeps that cash in the bank, because we don't yet know how long we're going to need it. Now, I don't know, I do know that the Startup Owner's Manual is a best-selling business book in Russia, as it has been for a long time. And I'm very proud of that. And I'm not here to sell books. And I'm sure that Gary or Daniel will lend you a copy if you want to borrow one. But in that book is a chapter we wrote called Survival Math, which is a way to look at your business, not the way an accountant would look at it, but the way a survivor would look at it. What do I need to spend? How do I look at my financials basically for the next 90 days, right? April, May, June. How am I going to make sure that we are still able to turn the lights on July the 1st? And so what you're trying to do, again, is with imperfect data, see if you can live to July 1st. And so we created in the book 3 examples of this thought process. One for a business selling a physical product, both direct to consumers and wholesale through retail stores. Second is sort of a e-commerce or advertising supported website or mobile site. And the third is an app. And just to give you a sense of how to use this and adjust it for your own situation, if you go to the next slide, I'll show you what I'm talking about. It's not you can do this on a cocktail napkin, not on, you don't even need a spreadsheet, right? And what you're looking at is, what do I think, the most conservative, careful estimate of how much money is going to come in the door over the next 2 or 3 months? How much of it is going to come direct from customers versus through a channel like a retailer that will take 30% if they're Amazon, 50% if they're a retail store? Add the 2, net revenue, how much money winds up in your account, add that, and then look at all of the obvious and hidden costs of acquiring customers. If you have 3 people on your social media team and the results of their work is clearly a lot worse than it was a month ago, maybe that quickly becomes a 1-person team, and the other 2 salaries go back in the bank. Next slide, please. So keep going. One more. So as you get started, you need to think about, how many people a day walk into your store or come to your website. Does it change on weekdays or versus weekends? Where do they come from? Are you spending money on things like AdWords or advertising or salespeople to get them? Or are you getting them the best way possible through social media and earned media and inexpensive marketing channels like email and viral marketing, Facebook and Instagram and so forth. And then do the same exercise for anything you are selling through a retail channel. Next, please. And you come to a very simple thing that literally fits on a cocktail napkin, right? If in the units sold column, I'm going to sell 100 in the first month and 150 in the second month. I get $5 per sale from a customer. So in September, I'm going to have $500, and in October, I'm going to have, $750. And then how many wholesale units minus the cost of sales. And what you come to fairly quickly is, right, today is the 2nd of April. How much money am I going to have in the bank on April the 30th and on May the 30th? The challenge with this is if you are selling to retailers, you can be assured that retailers are going to pay their bills much more slowly. And so in some ways, the worst thing that you can do is sell a lot of merchandise to a big retailer, because a big retailer in a good time pays their bill in 60 or 90 days. In a horrible time, they may pay it in 120 or 180 days, and you have just given away one of your most important assets, your inventory, and you're going to see no cash for it for some serious number of months. So you really have to look at this a very different way than a professional accountant would look at it, because you're looking at almost as if the whole business is run out of the front pocket of your blue jeans. And today I have, 10,000 rubles in my pocket. Tomorrow I have 6,000. How am I going to always make sure when I reach into that pocket, there's enough rubles in it to pay today's bill? So next slide, please. Right? Then you look at the other side. What are the things that I absolutely have to spend money on? So looking down the September column, and again here, I hope you'll look at the slides and think about this much more slowly. I just want to give you an overview of this approach to thinking about your business that was important to startups when they were in the best economy, and is infinitely more important to startups in my view of the world today. So when you look at the cost side, you look at only a few numbers. What are the salaries I have to pay? What are the fixed costs like rent or computer leases or insurance or whatever? What am I spending to acquire a customer? In this example, we sold 300 units direct to customers, and it cost us $3 per unit for AdWords or billboards or advertising or whatever. And then what do we have to spend for the physical product itself? And so you do this sort of very simple math. And then if I could have the next slide, please. Again, you add it up in a very simple, think of it as your blue jean pocket, right? I need 2,700 rubles to live from April 2nd to April 30th. And in month 2, I need 3,600 rubles to get from today to the end of the month. So again, it doesn't count an invoice you might send to a retailer, or one of the places where you can be the worst, deceive yourself the most is, I just signed a 12-month contract with Bob Dorf to provide network security services for 1,000 rubles a month. So I have 12,000 rubles in new revenue. this is a mistake many startups make that is particularly deadly at a time like this, because you don't know if your customer will be in business in July, and you don't know if your business will be in business in July. So celebrating future revenue is very nice for investor presentations and very nice in a booming economy, but it can really lead you into trouble in a difficult, turbulent time like this. Next slide, please. Right? So you added it all up, and now you get to quickly see, you know, do I have enough cash, enough rubles in my blue jeans to be here with the lights on May the 1st? Did I include everything? Like, gee, where is that bill from the lawyers that says pay it or we're going to sue you instead of somebody else? And if you don't, let's go to the next slide, right? What are the kinds of things you can start to do? I talked about this briefly already, so I won't go into too much detail. But for example, with one startup I'm working with, we are sort of having what you could only describe as a half-price sale on equity in the business. The risk is much higher today than it was a few months ago. Our cash need is considerable, but our future is very bright even in this difficult time. And so instead of seeking investment at a $10 million valuation, we would like to take in money from a few smart investors, and anybody who can make a decision by the 15th of April can invest at a $5 million valuation. So yes, it hurts, but it hurts a lot less than going out of business, I assure you, right? But some of the other things to think about: can you give up your office space and move into an incubator or an accelerator where you give away some equity and you get back office space and technology and also a brain trust of people, that can help you think through and work through these troubled times, and they're going to have investor contacts and advisor contacts and so forth. Can you talk to vendors about extending your payment terms for them? Or if you have one particularly large or important vendor, will he or she take some equity in your company instead of cash? It's a good time to go see, if you happen to have an uncle who's an oligarch, good time to pay him a visit and see if there's any way to get him to either make you a loan or make an investment. And then the last thing, of course, is mostly for the health and safety of your friends and loved ones, go to church, but add one more prayer for your financial situation. Next slide. I think we're just about through the slides, and some of this is sort of obvious. What do you do if it doesn't add up, right? So first thing you probably need to do, as weird as it sounds, is to spend less on customer acquisition and to get much more aggressive about things that cost a lot less. Viral marketing, email marketing, PR articles in media, things that don't drain cash to bring in cash. Another thing that's very helpful to physical product people in particular is bundling. The price of one is 1,000 rubles, the price of 3 is only 2,000 rubles, and push the order for 3 at a lower profit margin to get more top line, more cash into your blue jeans pocket. You may think about abandoning the retail channel. You're not going to be able to get retailers' attention these days anyway to sell them. In most circumstances, when you're selling at retail, you're either giving up 30% if it's an online retail platform like, Amazon or Alibaba or whatever, or 50% if it's a physical retail store. And so maybe one solution for the short term is to put less effort into the revenue lines or revenue opportunities that give you 50 rubles out of 100 instead of all of the rubles coming into your bank account. And the last thing is, you know, is there some part-time work you can do to help you through the crisis? When I started my first business, it wasn't really going all that well, to be honest. And after about 6 months, I got a call from the radio station I had worked at saying, you know, we really need you back. Is there any chance you could work for us at night as a sports editor? And I said, wow, get my old salary back and still have my entire day free to work on my startup. And for about 6 months, I worked at my startup from 7 in the morning till 6 at night. Then I jumped in a taxi and went to the radio station and wrote newscasts from 6:30 at night till 1:30 in the morning. I don't think I could do that now, but when I was 22, I could work, you know, 20 hours a day and do that for weeks at a time and still party on the weekends. So think about whether there is something you can do to subsidize your salary or others people's salaries to get the business through this difficult time, you know, by reducing the total salary expense. Next, please. And then there are two other examples. There's one of an advertising supported or a commerce supported website. And then the third one, which is basically a downloadable, you know, web or mobile app. And so it will walk you through essentially the same approach, the same kind of thinking. And I would really encourage you to do this as quickly as you can, and most important, as honestly as you can. Don't tell yourself that all your customers are going to stick with you in this time because you do a good job and they love you, because it's just, you know, they're going through an exercise similar to the one you're going through. Next. So that's really it, okay? Obviously, the Startup Owner's Manual is there to help. I would refer you back to one of the very first slides about some articles by some people a lot smarter than I am about how to think your way through this tough time. And I hope that things improve in your country as quickly as possible, and hopes that I can come back and have a real drink with all of you, celebrating your survival of this very difficult time. And so we have some time for your questions, and I thank you for your attention, and I thank the Zoom bombers for not paying us another visit.
Yeah, thank you very much. It is really exciting, like really interesting conversation. I just wanted to add that for the example you raised about the retail, in Russia, Russian, actually not retail, restaurants pivoted a very interesting way. They are going out of business, and same like in the States, right? Like your example. But what they started doing is actually they work on delivery, and the entire team, including waiters, including the founders, except the cooks, they all do delivery as delivery men. So it's like this how they pivoted to survive.
Right, that's happening certainly here too. But if you think about most restaurants, even before you get to the added cost of delivery, the volume is off dramatically. The restaurant owner, the Russian lady who owns the diner, she's doing $200 a day in takeout business. She was doing $2,000 a day when the restaurant was open. So it's a short-term, hopefully survival strategy. One of the most popular restaurant chains in New York City, a series of 6 or 7 restaurants. Shake Shack is one that I'm pretty sure I visited on the Arbot. One is one of them, and the founder terminated or fired 20,000 employees. His business, so at 90% of his employee base, and they're doing takeout business, but 20,000 people are no longer. And he was, he wrote this beautiful blog post about how sad he was, and I'm sure he spent his whole life building that business. And as sad as it was for him, it's sadder still for the single mom who's a waitress in one of those restaurants and is now going home, with no salary. So it's a very difficult time, and I don't want to suggest for a minute that I gave you anything close to all the answers to how you bring your own startup through this tough time. I hope I gave you some things to think about, some ideas, and so forth. But what else? Do we have any other questions?
Yeah. Hi, this is Gus. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Gus.
Hey, hi. You mentioned something really interesting regarding the customers that they're distracted and they are very reticent to listening to you. Is there a way to show some sensitivity and understanding and still contact them and try to do business for new customers?
Yes, I think I think the best way to do that is to first acknowledge their struggle and challenge. In other words, dear Bob, I am sure, like everyone else in the education business, you are dealing with a lot of serious challenges and issues right now. And I hope most of all that you and your family are safe and healthy in this difficult time. I know this is not a good time for a sales pitch, but I have something that could help you and your students through better learning during the, viral epidemic. In other words, acknowledge their stresses and be gentle. Don't be, I've been selling services and products my entire life, and I am, what one of my Italian clients used to call me, the bulldozer. This is not the time for a bulldozer. This is the time for a teddy bear, a sympathetic teddy bear. And it could even be, gentler in the sense of, just like to talk to you for a few minutes about how some of our customers like you are making adjustments to survive. And if there's a chance for us to help you, we'd be glad to do that. But at the very least, it would be our honor to help you with 3 good ideas about how to get through. In other words, it's not a good time for a bulldozer sales guy or lady. It's just not. Even with that sort of more gentle approach, your response rate is going to be dramatically lower, than it is in a normal time. I had a CEO complaining to me 2 weeks ago about one of the members of his team in a business school project wasn't doing his work. And I had just happened to have spoken to that team member a day or 2 before. He was in the middle of laying off 40 employees at his advertising agency in Mumbai, which is completely shut down and in terrible shape. He's in the middle of ruining the lives of 40 people that worked for him for years. And when he finished that job, he had to go to the parent company CEO to negotiate his own termination. So here's a guy who's, so how can you possibly expect that guy to have any interest in almost anything you have to say, unless it's, I have a job for you, right?
Thank you.
So,
You validated my approach. I am 100% in agreement with you. That is the only way to go right now.
yeah, and I think somebody asked a question here about how do you approach VCs? I think exactly the same way. I know this isn't the best time for an investor pitch, but we have something that, you know, and I will, you know, I'm glad to do this at your convenience. I would only like 5 or 10 minutes because we have pivoted our company to something that can help lots of others and also generate a lot of revenue and profit as a result of our response to the you know, the crisis. So, and I would expect, if you normally, I think the sort of average is about, you send 100 emails to VCs and Gary Fowler didn't sign them, you get 3 or 4 responses out of 100. I would cut that estimate in half for now. It's going to be very, very hard. And if you are not in urgent need of funding, I wouldn't waste my time on it, to be honest. What I would do instead is focus on getting my business moving and put all my energy into getting customers, into making adjustments to the business model, because the results you're going to get are going to be so slow. The return on your investment of energy is going to be so small chasing VCs who don't know you, as compared to trying to keep the customers you have now and perhaps find either more things to sell them or referrals from them to other potential customers. And I would, unless you are in, and I hate to say it, but I really think even if you are in desperate need of cash, better to go and find your way to an oligarch or find your way to a government bureau that will make an emergency loan or something like that. I think you have a better chance with an approach like that than you do with a cold introduction to a venture capitalist in Moscow or New York or almost anywhere. And it's also probably a time where having people who can get those investors' attention, like a Gary Fowler, is more important than ever, because they may not take the meeting, but they'll at least take the call with Gary. And if you are, or they're more likely to take a call from Gary than from somebody they don't know, I guess is a better way to say it. His response rate will also go down now, no matter how good he is. But you need to shepherd your own energy and sort of conserve your own energy, because you're going to face a real difficult few months keeping your business alive and moving forward. And again, that's just one man's opinion. I have seen this movie too many times, and this is probably the most horrible of the horror movies I've ever seen. And the added sadness is, I think the statistic is now every 6 minutes, somebody in the New York City area dies from coronavirus. Every 6 minutes. That's a lot more important than your next investor. And so, and I think, anyway, what's next? Also, you're welcome to share these slides with colleagues, with other, and other entrepreneurs. It's a difficult time for all of us, and hopefully we will get through it. So we have time for like 1 or 2 more questions, Daniel?
Yeah, there is one more question. Actually, this is the one I posted. I think it will be interesting for the community, and definitely we will share your presentation with the community. It will be we really appreciate that.
Yeah. What are the differences in raising money in the U.S. versus China versus Eastern Europe? Well, I would say that you got them in the right order in terms of where is the risk tolerance the greatest. I spent a lot of time in Latin America teaching back in 2012 and 13 and 14. And nobody in Latin America wanted to invest in a startup, period, end of discussion. Wealthy people in Colombia, the country, not the university, wealthy people in Colombia would rather own 3% of an empty office building than 50% of a digital media startup, because at least they knew they could go and touch their empty office building. And it's only literally in the last 2 or 3 years that investors in Latin America have started to open their eyes to the opportunities to make and to lose money in the startup investing world. When we were, first teaching, when I was first teaching at Skokovo, also in the, 2012, 13, 14, 15 time, the whole idea of startup investing was still very, very new, and among even the wealthiest Russians, and it's only awakened in the last 5 years, and a lot of what awakens an appetite for investing is successful startups you can point to. So China certainly has many more than Eastern Europe, and so think of it as a wave, and as the as the number of successes is what awakens investors to the possibility of making money by investing in startups. And so, not counting the months of March and April, Russia was really moving along quite well, as were some of the other CIS countries. I spent time a year or so ago in Latvia, in Riga, working with some really amazing startups that were reaching out. Obviously, right, Latvia, I think the population is 2.5 million, if I remember. So you have to move beyond the Latvian market to have a successful business, almost by definition. Russia, you have lots of places to go, and there's also lots of respect for Russian engineering that would allow it to cross oceans more quickly than Latvian startups, for example. I spent some time in Kazakhstan, again, much earlier in the development cycle. Very, very few successful, startups where investors had started to make money. And so getting more investors interested was significantly more difficult than it is, in Russia. And so, and who said, everyone, it says here in the chat, this is the time to begin to build relationships with venture capitalists to the extent they will allow you to just come and have a cup of coffee or a glass of vodka and talk about your business and where it's going. And I would say the very best way to get any investor's attention is not to ask them for money, but to ask them for feedback. Okay, why? Because no investor is going to give you money on the first date anyway. The first meeting is an introductory getting to know you meeting. And the investor is going to want to see your performance sort of over time. So if you can get that first meeting I just want to tell you what we're doing, how we're adjusting our business model to deal with the challenges of the virus and the crisis it brings. I'd love to show you what we're doing, get your feedback. That is probably a better chance of getting a meeting with an investor than I want to show you my PowerPoint and tell you why you should give me, 500,000 rubles right now.
Yeah, elaborating on that question, and let's take 2 more questions and wrap up. So I don't want to hold you too long in here. So one of the question I wanted to ask, and elaborating on the previous question you just touched, one of the things really success. I see some success in startups that are doing like successful sales, not just through hard sales, but through soft sales. And this is about relationships that you were discussing. So what's your opinion and recommendation how to build soft sales within the sales team? Like, how would you recommend that?
Well, I think the best thing you can do, right, is to think of your conversation with a potential customer as what value can I bring to that customer in a conversation, and to focus your first conversation with that potential customer around, we are selling software for managing small and mid-sized law firms and accounting firms. I have talked to 20 of them in the last 2 weeks about how they are getting through the crisis. And I'd like to just share the 5 best ideas I've heard from them with you. Okay, now 4 of those 5 ideas ought to be how customers are using your product to survive in this time. But the conversation is about making the potential customer smarter first and getting the order second. I think that's the very best way to introduce yourself to a new customer, or to some degree to a new VC. I see you are a VC who specializes in e-commerce. Like you, I've talked to 20 other e-commerce startups in the last few weeks. I'd like to compare what I've learned from them and see if it's helpful to you, and also hear what you've learned from the startups you've talked to. And then you gently try to move that conversation to your business model and where you are hoping to go, and why why they should think about investing. But just a bulldozer to a venture capitalist is going to run right into a brick wall, and basically, in my, again, one man's opinion, it's going to largely be an unproductive use of your time, at least until we see some kind of stability in the world, which I fear is at least a month, if not 3 months away, or perish the thought, farther away than that.
Are there any more questions for Bob? We are wrapping this up, and we have one more question before we finish. Please feel free to write this question or say, or if you don't, we just will start closing.
Okay, well then, so let me just thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoyed our little Zoom bombing session, but more important, I hope I haven't scared the crap out of you, and I've given you some thoughts about what you can do today to think about how to sort of restage or reorient or refocus your startup and get through this difficult time. And I hope that at some point in the not too distant future, we will have cocktails with Bob Dorf live, and we'll say Nazdrovia and have a few vodkas together, and hear about how you have come through this difficult time successfully. you know, with help from the GSD team and from the book and from the cocktail napkin math exercise I walked you through. And most important, I hope you are careful and you are holding your loved ones and friends close, even the friends you don't love, and being very, very careful in this difficult time. This virus is scary and unpredictable and very dangerous. And I wish you all the very best and hope to see you before too long at a celebration cocktail party in Moscow with real Bob Dorf and real Russian vodka. So thank you very much for your attention, and it's been a delight talking with you this evening, and all the very best.
Thank you very much, Bob. I let Gary Fowler to say a few words as well. From my end, I really, really enjoyed this conversation. It was super valuable. I'm sorry for what happened, but this is every time we learn something. Was our first such a big session, and we are blessed to have you here and really appreciate your time.
It's my honor and my pleasure, and thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, I just want to say that, you know, even in these trying times, for us personally, one of our companies just got funded, and we're really happy about that. Today, we have a meeting with Lightspeed Ventures. Yesterday, the day before, I met with SoftBank. So they're really interested in Russian AI companies. Today, there's a huge appetite still for companies that are on artificial intelligence. So I know there's a gloomy time, but remember, there's a couple layers. One is the physical layer, and then the other is the online layer like we are today. And of course, there's got to be some refinements, but I got to tell you, the VCs right now, I've had more interest in companies in artificial intelligence, which is what we're working in today, than any other time. So I just want to say there is hope, and they're actually reaching out to me, and I have not had it at the level it is today. And I'm sure it's not because we're the smartest guys in the world. They're home, they're with their kids, they're with their dogs, they're with their wives, and they want to talk and communicate too. So let's use this as an opportunity. Remember, I'll tell you a little story. Back a long time ago, 2000, we almost went out of business. This was after Bob and I first met. The company is called Click Software, IET. In March, the market tanked. We did an IPO in June. We sold the company 6 months ago for $1.35 billion to Salesforce. People said we couldn't do it. People said it sucked. The things are bad. We didn't listen to them. We went in the other direction. I'm not saying it was easy, right? And I only had a tiny, tiny part of the company, but I can tell you we did it. So, you know, and I can tell you today, one of our companies recently got financed, and we're in the process of getting another one financed now too. So keep your chins up. Artificial intelligence is hot. Russia has incredible talent. Use that talent. And it's not shotgun anymore. It's more surgical, right? It's more, you know, point to point. So we just got to make some better decisions. So anyhow, that's what I had to say. Derek, do you want to say any words, or are you there? Derek?
No, it was just an amazing time, and I'm just so thankful that everyone came out for not one but two webinars, and just thanks everybody.
Hey Bob, that was incredible.
The one thing that I always like to say is I am the co-founder of GSV Lab, GSV Venture Studios, but I'm an entrepreneur first, and I will help any entrepreneur at any stage with anything you need at any time. So just reach out if there's something we can do to help you promote your business. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Be safe.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Be well, be safe.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thanks, Bob.
Goodbye. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.